Hello everyone, so welcome to our video series supporting students with a host of topics really. So this will be lesson one of our video series, one of six. Throughout the series we'll be hoping to cover a number of topics that are supporting you with your next steps. So that includes things like applications, interviews, we'll also be looking at personal branding as well. So the whole host of different things that we'll look through these six videos, hopefully to help you out with your next steps. So I'm Alex Nightingale, so I work for the Greater Lincolnshire LEP. So I support a lot of schools in the area with their careers education. Throughout the video series, I'm going to be joined by Rob Knowles. So Rob, I'll come to you just to give us a bit of an introduction as well, if that's all right.
Okay, thank you, Alex. So my name's Rob, as Alex has said. My company is a micro enterprise called Qubit, and it works with all organisations of all sizes to support their business development through their people. So that may be coaching, and that's quite often the case of late. I'm getting a lot of work coaching. It may be mentoring, it may be training, it may be development, it may be cultural development. Often it's a mix of all of those things, and it's about dealing with issues within the business or developing the business or seizing opportunities, changing mindsets, etc. But it's developing the business through the people.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Rob. So this first session, what we wanted to do really is to give you as students a bit of an understanding of what Lincolnshire looks like. So pretty much all of you, I would imagine, live within Lincolnshire. Your parents probably work here as well. So what we thought it'd be really good is to just give you a bit of an understanding of what I guess are the big industries within Lincolnshire. And as the LEP, what do we anticipate will be those big industries moving forward? So when you do leave school, potentially leave university, what are we expecting to be those big sectors within Lincolnshire that are likely to provide you with job opportunities? So we've got James with us today to support us looking at that topic. So James, can I just come over to you and just give you a bit of an introduction about what the LEP is, and then we can kick off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, my name's James Baty and I work for Greater Lincolnshire LEP with Alex. And a LEP, so, is a local enterprise partnership. And what they essentially are local partnerships between local government and businesses. And what the LEP does is plays that role in terms of deciding what the local economic priorities for a place might be and undertaking those activities to drive the economic growth and essentially create local jobs and opportunities for people. And in all of England, there are 38 LEPs, so they operate across the entire country. And as for Greater Lincolnshire, operates from the South Humber Bank, so up near Grimsby, all the way down sort of Stamford in the south of Lincolnshire. So it covers a huge geographic area.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, James. Cool. So let's look at Lincolnshire then. We're quite a rural county, aren't we? It's spread far and wide. We have obviously some larger areas, the likes of Lincoln. But other than that, we are quite rural. So James, I guess, can you give us a bit of an overview of what are the kind of main industries that make up Lincolnshire in terms of businesses, I suppose? And, when a student is to leave school or come back into the county to potentially work, what can they kind of expect to be the big areas that are likely to be looking for people for work?
Sure. So I suppose it will come as no surprise that Lincolnshire is a sort of large land-based economy. So it's a very large area, quite rural in the most part. But its economy is worth just about £21 billion to the entire UK. But that said, sort of 90% of its land mass is rural and coastal areas. So because it's kind of where it's sat in the country and because of its kind of land that it's got, food plays a huge part in terms of Greater Lincolnshire's economy particularly. So that's not just in terms of agriculture, it's actually in terms of food production. It's one of the most important food producing areas in the whole of the country. And some of the parts of the food producing sector are actually really world renowned in terms of some of the research activities and innovation going on within the food sector. And the food sector itself is worth about £3.5 billion to Lincolnshire. And even in North East Lincolnshire, we also have kind of seafood production. So it's not just to do with farming and crops as you might think it is with a rural area, but actually there are some really big state-of-the-art facilities within Lincolnshire, dealing in all sorts of things from robotics through to kind of, high-end food production, and all of the logistics that goes with that as well, within the area. I suppose the other big things, particularly for Lincolnshire at the moment, to look out for is energy. So we all know the kind of emerging climate agenda that's coming forward. And in fact, the Humber Estuary, and particularly the South Humber Bank, so sort of around Barton upon Humber and Immingham and Grimsby, is one of the most polluting areas of the country at the moment in terms of having that heavy industry. And there's a real focus and commitment in trying to reduce down the carbon emissions that area is producing.
Yeah.
And in doing that, it will really produce jobs, it will generate more industry. And I think that those two in particular are a real focus for Lincolnshire, although we have things like visitor economy here as a big sector. We have a good sort of defence sector and a big defence sector, particularly clustered around Lincoln, and so on. So, but those two, I would say, the two that we really see the sort of future potential going forward in.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think that's really, really valuable, isn't it? I think a lot of young people probably associate Lincolnshire with farming to an extent. And, I imagine there will be some people watching this thinking, well, I have no interest in farming, potentially Lincolnshire's not for me. But I think, what we have to potentially get across here is that, the food sector in particular, there is a whole host of different jobs that are attached to it. You don't necessarily have to be working on a farm as such to have a sort of link within that sector, do you? I suppose. I think that's important to get across, isn't it?
Yeah, I can add into that, Alex. Just to illustrate that point, my daughter's last but one job was in a printing company, but she's got her qualifications in chemistry. But her job was to work with the food production to develop the technology for the packaging, so that when you microwave your meals or oven bake them, you rip the top off, it doesn't trap them. So she did lots of tests, lots of work, and lots of transferable skills beyond the skills she learnt in school and university. And the other point there is I work with Siemens in Grimsby, so off Skegness there's the wind farm. So if you may or may not believe me, but when they service those wind farms, they have to go quite far afield to get qualified technicians. So people actually travel into Lincolnshire to do the job, stay for 3 months, and go back home. So there are opportunities around there, and also beyond the actual wind farms. So the peripheral stuff, the supply chain stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, and a good example as well, Rob. Have how just because you have a particular skill set and that marketing or producing, packaging or whatever, that is very much transferable into multiple different sectors, isn't it? And I think that's a really, really important to get across as well. So I'm going to come back to you, James, if I may. So, I guess we want to focus on young people here, and what advice, I guess, would we give young people when they are looking at or thinking about their career? What sort of things should we be trying to pass on to these young people to consider when they're thinking about jobs within Lincolnshire, do you think?
I think we've hit on one of the big things already is try to avoid any sort of preconceptions that you have about what an industry might entail. So absolutely great point there around kind of the things that emerge around the food industry and the opportunities that are there. Lincolnshire actually has the largest food robotics team in all of Europe operating within it, and robotics are really important for the food production and automation of that. So if you're into manufacturing or if you're into robotics and AI, all of that plays a really big role, even in something like food, which you may just assume is relate back to farming. So I think that's really important. I think some of the things that particularly at the moment, so with the pandemic currently going on, what that's really drawn into focus is we've seen a lot of technological advancement happen in a very short period of time compared to how it would have happened otherwise. So you've seen probably 5 years worth of innovation happening within 2 or 3 months. And the thing that really that tells me is that if I was looking for a job coming out of coming out of school or university in the future. I think being very flexible and sort of making sure that you're across some of this technology, because digital particularly is going to be critically important for the way that our economy operates within Lincolnshire, but across the whole of the UK. And I think the kinds of opportunities there are always keep that open mind, because you might go down an avenue, but as we say here, and as Rob was reflecting on, we've got really, really key pieces of key roles that we can't fill necessarily in Lincolnshire that actually we should be able to fill with local people coming in. And these are well paid jobs. They're in really, good sought after sort of sectors. And of course, within Lincolnshire at the moment, the cost of living is really good compared to living in somewhere like London or Leeds or Manchester. So I think what I would say is, try and look around locally if you can, because there are an abundance of opportunities, and really make sure that you don't sort of have any preconceptions about what that might entail.
Yeah, thanks, James. I think that's really important as well. And I guess just touching on that digital aspect, and I think throughout a number of the videos that we'll look at, we will talk a bit about how it's important to be aware of those, I think. And Rob, obviously you work with businesses, and I guess, have you seen that kind of innovation, I suppose, speed up since the pandemic has taken hold? Is that something that you're kind of very aware of?
Yeah, very much so. I'll paint this picture in two extremes. So one is trying to keep in contact with people who become almost technophobic. Zoom was out there, it was always free, there's Google Hangouts. So almost to ring them up and say, look, try this. But the others, and this is the majority of people, have actually gone, okay, well, we're locked down, we can't stop doing what we're doing. So Zoom is just an example, but it'd be interesting to see a comparison of Zoom users, either UK or worldwide, pre-COVID and during and post-COVID. So it's accelerated all that kind of thing. It's accelerated the way people do business. They're actually questioning the reasons for doing things, and they're maybe not doing things they were, and that comes at a cost, etc. So lots and lots of innovations in very small ways, and in some cases it's a complete change of direction, I guess. Yeah, very, very much so, and very interesting what you say about the compression of time for that innovation. Yeah, and I guess there's going to be quite a lot of worried landlords of retail and spaces that relied on income, because people are questioning whether they need office space anymore.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah,
I think really important, isn't it? Is just to kind of not have any of those kind of prejudging a certain sector when there could be so many different opportunities that are available to young people as well. So I want to touch on briefly, the makeup of small businesses, James, as well. Obviously, you've mentioned kind of the main sectors there, but I suppose like any other area within the country, Lincolnshire's made up of small businesses. And in a later lesson, we are going to look at, potentially the opportunities that might be available to young people about setting up their own business. So can you talk a bit about, how prosperous, I suppose, the small businesses are within Lincolnshire, and how that, that might represent an opportunity that young people might feel like they want to explore at a future date?
Sure. So out of all places in the UK, Greater Lincolnshire has one of the highest proportions of having small businesses. So if you take the entire business base and where people are employed, it's got a lot of small businesses proportionally. I mean, they make up about sort of 99.8% of the actual total population of business, but in terms of employment as well, they're really high. And that's partly because of the nature of Lincolnshire, and because of that, as we talked about earlier, the kind of large geographic area. And therefore, you've got these sort of small businesses that pick up. But I think, again, if we think about the future of digital technologies and the fact that even 6 months ago, we probably wouldn't be sat here using Zoom, having this conversation on this platform, and the technology's accelerated, that opens a lot of doors for small businesses who are operating in places like Lincolnshire. So there are huge potential opportunities there, because you're less reliant on being in a particular locality. And as Rob mentioned, that might be a bit of a headache for landlords, but it also means that if you are a small business, or you have an idea, or you want to be an entrepreneur, and you want to go out and sort of do that, you can do it all digitally now, and you don't necessarily need to be located in a particular place. Obviously, unless you're doing, you want to open a cafe or something, because that's quite a hard thing to do through the internet. But I think the opportunities that the digital technology advancements that we've just seen offer small businesses are huge, and particularly for a place like Lincolnshire.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. What about from your perspective, Rob? You obviously own a small business, and I think in a later episode we talk a bit about your journey. But I mean, do you have anything to add on that, and on the opportunities that maybe that they're available within Lincolnshire for small business?
Absolutely. So, picking up on what James has said, I converse, and I'm still trying to convert into clients, people in Canada, the Philippines. I've had conversations with people in the Middle East. To be clear, they are just conversations at the moment. But previously, I would not certainly jump on a plane to go and have a coffee with somebody in Oman just to try and tap business for them. So it's a very cheap and easy way to do it. So I've got to adapt what I'm doing to suit that. So there's the time difference. But we spoke this morning about dodgy internet connections. So I'm hostage to the fortunes of broadband connectivity. However, it doesn't stop me, and I've got to adapt what I do. And when I succeed, I've then got to adapt my content to make the viewer, it's not the same as standing up in front of a group of people. So the opportunities are there, absolutely. And you're limited by your imagination, I guess. What went through my mind, James, when you said about the cafe, but absolutely right. But, I bet there's somebody working out that, you can buy this version of this coffee. I'll post it to you. And do you know what? We'll Zoom and we'll have a coffee together. How it works out, I don't know. But that's the kind of thing that people need to think. Jump on the back of this technology. I mean, we've seen some great examples of it through lockdown. I mean, I wasn't a fan or didn't tune in, but Joe Wicks he just hit a spot, didn't he? So if we think about things like that.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's, and probably when we're kind of coming to the end of the time that we've got for the session anyway. And I think throughout this video series, we would like the students to really think about what we're saying with an open mind, I think, and, look at everything potentially as an opportunity. And I think, what we're coming to the conclusion there is you not necessarily jump to conclusions about various different things. It is about seeing things as an opportunity. So I think that's probably a really, really good point to kind of start to conclude upon. So what we'll do throughout the series is, before we finish, we'll come to each of the guests and just ask them kind of what their key takeaway or key advice they would give to a young person based around the topics that we've discussed. So James, I'll come to you first. I think it might be that you just want to echo what I've just said, but what would you say is kind of one of the key things from today's discussion that you'd like to pass on to young people?
I think really it's important at the moment. The pace of change is so fast that it's just keep really flexible, keep your options, and obviously sort of make the most of the acceleration in technology that's happening. You don't have to be a sort of genius in engineering to master some of this and to make use of it now. It's as good as it can possibly be at the moment in terms of opening up the markets and opening up the way in which you can sort of piggyback on some of this technology. So I would just say completely, or be as flexible as possible, and willing to take some of these things on and explore the possibilities that the current kind of acceleration of technology is offering.
Great stuff. Thanks, James. Rob?
In an ideal world, you'll find something that you really like doing and get somebody to pay you to do for it. But we don't live in an ideal world. But if you can kind of aspire to that, and I'd suggest we think big picture here as well. So Lincolnshire, the agricultural county, etc. But it's not about jumping in albeit a £250,000 tractor with all the bells and whistles on. It's not just about ploughing fields. It's about the opportunities that are beyond it. So it's not just about building turbines. It's wind turbines. It's about everything else that goes on around it. So think big picture and jump on the back of technology, as James just said.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much both. I think it's been a really insightful first lesson. So we'll finish there, and thanks very much for your time.
Thanks very much.